What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG, the place with the decks, and we've got a quick one for you, I would imagine, today. I'm pretty sure this is going to be pretty fast, just like the deck. This is Mono Red Aggro, which won 2 Pro Tours in a row, but after the rotation, it's sort of MIA or DOA, more accurately. So, how do we build this deck nowadays without Lightning Strike and Searing Blood and Stoke the Flames and some other things that we lost? There's some ways. It's definitely not undoable. Not only is it doable, but I think it's doable on a budget. We can spend about 40 bucks and make this, which is bullcrap to be honest, because like a year ago we could have made this for like $20, but the popularity of Mono Red Aggro and now Atarka Aggro has made some of these cards just go through the roof. But the deck is still reasonably priced at the end of the day, especially when you compare it to like $800 Jeskai. You know, you're basically spending 5% of what you would spend on Jeskai, and that's a pretty good deal. 15 creatures in the deck. They're all 1 and 2 drops, just very, very low to the ground creatures. Let me give you all the 1 drops here. We're playing 4 copies of Monastery Swiftspear, just Eternal Format All-Star, 3 copies of Zurgo Bellstriker, and then 1 copy of Lightning Berserker. These are all the 1 drops we need. You'll see 2 copies of Lightning Berserker in some decks, but I've read a few articles where people that play Mono Red Aggro and Atarka Aggro are like, we don't really like Lightning Berserker that much, but still good against some of the important things in the format. You've got to have at least the 1 copy. Dash is really good against things like Languish and Sorcery Speed Removal and even Silk Wrap, which is in damn near everything nowadays. So, gotta have some things like this. Dash is a very important ability in this format. Zurgo is Zurgo, you know, you can't really argue with a 2/2 for 1 mana, it's not bad. And also it dashes, so everything I just said about Dash also applies to Zurgo. And Monastery Swiftspear, like I said, Eternal Format All-Stars. She's playing Legacy, Modern, and Standard, just everything she can be in, you know. This card could be Mythic. We'd gladly pay the $15 she would definitely be. But we only have to pay $3 for Monastery Swiftspear, you know, $10, $12 for a playset. Not bad. And if you've been playing aggro at all, you've definitely got your playset of this lady already. So not too much to worry about there. And probably, at the end of the day, the best creature in the entire deck. On to the 2 drops, 4 copies of Mage-Ring Bully in the budget deck. Now, the only upgrade I would really recommend, honestly, the entire deck, is Abbot of Keral Keep in this slot instead of Mage-Ring Bully. But that'll cost you like $25, $30. Low prices on TCG Player. So that is a pretty substantial upgrade, but the only one I would even consider making, honestly. Deck runs smoothly other than that. But Mage-Ring Bully, a prowess guy, it's always good to have 8 of those, whether it's Abbot or Mage-Ring Bully. But Abbot is a really good 3 or even 4 drop. You know, we're running a lot of 2 mana spells in the deck, and really good just to play a land. You know, on the 3rd turn, that's not bad. See a lot of, he gets used that way a lot. So Abbot of Keral Keep, definitely the superior card in this slot, but if you want to pay as little as possible for the deck, Mage-Ring Bully is still fine. Prowess is there, and Prowess is what we're really worried about in this 2-drop creature here. So one or the other of these. If you're a poor man like me, play Mage-Ring Bully. If you got a couple of bucks like nobody, play Abbot of Keral Keep. 2 copies of Mardu Scout in the main deck. Again, Dash is really important. We got something like 6 creatures with Dash in the main deck. Helps our resiliency out against cards like Languish and Sorcery Speed Removal. Ruinous Paths these play. And Silk Wrap is, again, everywhere. You'll hear me say that a couple of times. We really need help against Silk Wrap because all of our guys can get Silk Wrap, so Dash really helps them that way. Just Mardu Scout, you know, 2 mana for 3 power. Always a good deal. You don't really get that every day in red either. I think Mardu Scout is still a fine creature. The last creature in the deck is kind of out of left field, but hear me out here. Just 1 copy of War-Name Aspirant. Aspirant? Nobody knows how to pronounce the name. I think it's Aspirant. But in any case, War-Name Aspirant is something I've been running in Mono Red Aggro for a really long time now, since like way before rotation. You know, I'll get a lot of combat tricks devoted to getting creatures through unblocked so they can deal a bunch of damage. And Aspirant can do that against all the tokens in the format. I think it's worth playing the 1 of in the main deck, mostly because even if it's not, you know, relevant for the tokens reason, then it's still a 2 mana 3 power guy most of the time, and that's exactly where we want to be. This is the only other slot that you could even possibly upgrade, but you'd have to be super rich to do it, and the only advantage would be to play McKindy Slide Runner. You could play Slide Runner in this slot, but I think that you would have to play like fetch lands in the land base to really maximize the level of power that you could get out of Slide Runner. And I'm just not really I don't want to devote like $60 or more just to the land base so I can make sure that I get a 4 power Slide Runner like 1 turn out of the game. I'd much rather play Aspirant for less money, and it's flexible in a different way. So you could do Slide Runner and fetch lands, but that's a lot of money for like just diminishing returns is all I'm saying. 24 spells in the deck, a lot of them really low on the curve. Let's start off with some burn. for 1 mana. 4 copies of Wild Slash and 3 copies of Fiery Impulse. You could play 4 copies of Impulse, honestly. A lot of creature-based decks running around, and after we get the Spell Mastery, takes care of like Mantis Rider. That's really, really important, you know. So I love Wild Slash. You can burn them in the face if they don't have any relevant creatures out. It's really good against control. Stuff like that. It's good against decks with Morph. It's good against Jace. You know, just a lot of important creatures in the format right now. We can Wild Slash or Impulse, you know. So I would definitely play as many of these as we can cram into the deck, especially Wild Slash. Just the best shock ever. And here are our combat tricks. We've got 4 copies of Titan's Strength, obviously, 4 copies of Sure Strike, which I'll talk about, and then 3 copies of Temur Battle Rage in the deck. You'll notice we're trying to do something similar to Atarka Aggro here. You know, we don't get to play Become Immense, but we still get Temur Battle Rage and Titan's Strength, and I think Sure Strike is a really, really fine card. If you're a friend of the channel, you've probably heard me talk about Sure Strike a couple of times. I like this card an awful lot. Not only does it work as a combat trick in this deck in conjunction with Temur Battle Rage, you know, the way like something like Titan's Strength or Become Immense would, but it also functions as removal in some ways. You know, they're going to be doing, again, like I said, a lot of blocking, and you can sort of pick and choose which guys you pick off. With Sure Strike, it's really, really fine card, especially with all our Prowess guys. Love Sure Strike. And obviously Titan's Strength and Temur Battle Rage I don't have to go into too much. It's sort of the big 1-2 punch in the format other than Become Immense and Temur Battle Rage, you know. Just even with 1/1 tokens, if you just hit them with a Temur Battle Rage and a Titan's Strength, that's only 3 mana too, you know. You're dealing something like 8 damage with just a 1/1 token that doesn't even have prowess or anything. So once you start talking about, you know, Mage-Ring Bully or Abbot and Monastery Swiftspear, just things start getting really dangerous. You can do a ton of damage out of absolutely nowhere if they only leave just 1 guy unblocked. So same basic philosophy as Atarka Red, and works an awful lot of the time, especially game 1. 4 copies of Dragon Fodder and 2 copies of Hordeling Outburst, our token producers. Like I said, if 1 guy gets through, we're doing a bunch of damage. Just being able to go wide, have that option, more guys unblocked is exactly what you need. And we've got Prowess guys, which is a little bit of synergy with these too. So all day, tokens producers, yes. And just 1 random enchantment in the deck. We're playing 1 copy of Impact Tremors because a lot of our creatures have dash, like I've said, and we've got some token producers. So Impact Tremors is really, really good. We do have some 2-drops and creatures in the deck, obviously, and some 2-drop spells and stuff. So I just want to play the 1 copy of Impact Tremors in the main. There are more in the side because it's good against some decks. Good against control if we can resolve it early game, you know, and decent against mid-range if we're going to get into board stalls and stuff, you know, get them down to like 8 or 9 life and then not be able to finish because they establish a board presence. Well, Impact Tremors can help out with that situation too. So there's some of the board, but in the main I just like to have the option of being able to go a little bit longer and have some sort of reach that we normally wouldn't have. You know, Impact Tremors can deal an extra 6-8 damage to them over the course of the game with dash creatures and with tokens and stuff like that. So I've always loved Impact Tremors. Again, if you're a friend of the channel, you know that about me. So I think it's worth playing at least the 1 copy in this deck. Here are the lands, 20 mountains. If you're thinking about spiffing it up, don't. Here's the sideboard. We're doing an awful lot of the sideboard, but like a traditional, you know, all-in aggro deck, which is exactly what we are, we do get worse after board still, but some of these tools are really, really important, including Rending Volley, which not only takes out Ujutais and such, but Mantis Rider, which is the big problem right now. Mantis Rider just, once it hits, it eats us alive, and it hits too early, so we need to be able to do something about it. Finally, here are your power rankings. A final score of 62. Not at all bad, you know. Just like an aggro deck should, it does what it wants to do very, very well. It's super fast. It's highly devoted to offense, you know, but takes a hit in certain categories because it's so all-in, you know. It doesn't have much defense. Despite the token producers and dash creatures, we still don't have much resiliency, you know. If we get blown out, we get blown out, and we're in a lot of trouble. And we have some problems against decks, especially like Jeskai, that can gain life and go into the long game and kill our guys really easily, you know. They have a lot of options against us. That's all I got for now. Take this up to F&M. I think this is a contender. If you don't have the money for Atarka aggro, if you don't have all those fetch lands or the Atarka's commands, I think this is a fine substitute, and you will be able to do some work with it. Well, as usual, what are we doing next time? I'm definitely going to do the Sultai deck next time, and I'm still tinkering with Sultai Aristocrats versus Sultai White, or like Sultai White Aristocrats. There's just like so many different ways to build a deck. There's so many amazing cards for it right now. So let me know what you want to see in the comments down there. I'm really interested in that. And soon there's 2 decks I want to cover really bad. I want to do a mono white deck, maybe mono white mid-range, or mono red aggro. I'm not really sure, but I do want to do mono white soon. And then I want to do a deck that I've seen pop up a few times lately. I'm really interested in Mardu Planeswalkers, sort of a Mardu Super Friends deck, you know. That deck looks really, really good, and I want to shuffle it up and and play with it really bad. So let me know what you want to see. I'll get right on that. If you enjoyed the content, do us a solid. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the thumbs up. Let us know how you felt about it. Share it on Facebook with your friends and all that stuff. It's awesome you do it. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.